I'm convinced more than ever that the Jaguars really, really like their team. I'll tell you why I feel that way on this edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Folks, thank you for joining me for another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listener. Quick reminder, we are also free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Make sure you go to YouTube, hit that like button, hit the bell, subscribe. The bell sends you a notification whenever we drop an episode. Also, if you listen to audio podcasts, wherever you do that at, just make sure you check in every single day to make sure you don't miss episode. Today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I wanted to give a special hello to all my everydayers for tuning in every day. That's why we call you everydayers. And if you tune in every day, you can be an everydayer too. And new people, I hope you enjoy the content and hope you enjoy the podcast. Now, real quick housekeeping. It's storm day right here in North Florida and all of over Florida and some in South Georgia. I hope everybody's staying safe. We aren't getting the brunt of it like a lot of people. There's some power outages here or there, but if you are one of those ones, our thoughts are with you, and hopefully everything will be okay. All right, so yesterday was the 53-man cut down day. Today was practice squad and waiver wire additions. And what the Jaguars did confirmed something that I already had an idea of. And it was also something that it reinforced something that they've already done. What did they do? I'm going to tell you. Nothing. And that tells you that they really do want to run it back. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the most additions that they made were in the draft, where they had all of those picks. Most of them they tried to trade. 10 of their draft picks made the 53-man roster. They did make a trade for Brandon McManus. No, they didn't make a trade. He got picked up early this year when he was released by Denver. That's new. What else is new? A couple of signings in free agency, but the relative inactivity told me something. That they really do like their club and they're depending on player development, and they're going to try to run it back. We're going to dissect that a little bit. I'm going to announce in segment 2 all of the guys that made the practice squad, and I'm not going to even make you wait for this part of it. They were all people that were just here yesterday, which even reinforces more that they like the guys that they have. And finally, it just tells you about the culture and the fit and how much it matters. They brought back guys they already knew about, and when it came time to get their practice squad, they brought back guys they already knew about. I talked about the pro personnel department yesterday, where evidently they didn't see anything that they like better than what they have already, and that tells you something about what they feel about the guys that they already have because they know the culture. So we'll go through all of that and try to tie all of this together for you. First and foremost, though, we can talk all day in February and March, and then at the time of the draft and the secondary free agency period about what the Jaguars should and should not be doing. And we can make, I wouldn't say excuses, but give the reasoning that for those things had something to do with the salary cap or trying to be fiscally responsible for next year. And I laugh at that because all you got to do is do your research and you'll find out the Jaguars are headed to a year next year where they're going to have so much salary cap, maybe more salary cap space than they have at any point. And to say that about a team that will be good again, and we fully expect them to be good, it means a whole lot. The one thing I can tell you is this: in all of the years that we suffered around here as people that either covered the team or were fans of the team, I kept telling folks for years, and I'm not going to turn this into the session where I talk about how right I am, but I told folks for years, it don't take that damn long to build a team. Do y'all remember we were in the third, fourth, fifth year of not only the regime prior to this one, but the Gene Smith regime prior to the Dave Caldwell era? It don't take that long, man. Look at what they've done in 2 years. 3, if you consider the offseason where they got Urban Meyer. So we'll say 3. But look what they've done. 2, it's 3 off seasons, but they've only played 2 seasons. They've been in the playoffs, and everybody expects them to go back and really, really challenge. In fact, everyone around it isn't it silent? You remember those little crickets that you hear all the time? Off season, all the chirping was always about how irrelevant the Jaguars were. And it always bothered me because I'm wondering, if somebody's irrelevant, why are you talking about them so much? Because everybody needs somebody to point the finger at to say that they're worse than their situation. Or everybody needs some sort of narrative to constantly talk about. Listen, you hear something? You know why you don't hear anything? Because there's nothing to talk about, except all of the good stuff that's coming out of North Florida right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars organization. It's funny how it changes. It's even funnier that it changed in 2 years, or 2.5 years. Whereas before, when the Jaguars were stuck, they were constantly stuck, and folks were saying, be patient, be patient. And I get it. That's the fan in a lot of people, right? Where you want to have this optimism, and even though you're looking at something that doesn't look right, you keep saying, be patient, give it more time, be patient. And all I kept saying all of those years was, no, we're not going to be patient. Do you remember the analogies I used to give? And this is why I do it, because I hope at one point I could always reference back to it. But the analogies that I used to give was this. You lay a foundation when you build a house. After you form it, you get a slab. Then you start your elevation. The Jaguars were constantly replacing players, trading players, starting over, and they kept knocking it back down, knocking it back down. I said at some point, you want to see an erect figure, an elevated actual project get finished, and you can look and say, that's who we are. Remember when I told you the Jaguars didn't have an identity? All of those years they were searching for an identity, right? And they could never find one. Well, now they have it. Now they've stopped changing their foundation, what it seems like was every other week. They bet on themselves because they're keeping the guys that they picked. They're not going out here and going into free agency and going crazy. And granted, I wanted them to add 1 or 2 players. I didn't want them to go crazy because I liked the team that they had too. But do you notice the difference? And in the result, when the atmosphere changed, when the culture changed, remember all of that talk about culture when they kept losing and folks got mad at the quarterback who was here before because he kept mentioning that word culture. He was partially right. Now, you didn't want to hear it from Nick Foles because he wasn't very good. But sometimes we get caught up in the messenger instead of being caught up in the message. The culture was bad because it was a CYA, it was cover your blank. And the reason why everybody was like that is because they weren't on the same page. You had a GM and you had a coach and then you had other people and then you hired another guy to come in. It was just a big entire mess. Everyone wanted to make sure that they had a job, if not here somewhere. And what happened was they could never get an identity. But now they have one. And now that team looks like this community. That team looks like the fans. Not really, but you know what I mean when I say looks like. I mean, you identify with them and they identify with you and they have a style of football that they're going to play that we all know what we expect every single week. And that, my friends, is having an identity that you can relate to. That is a culture. And that's why they like their own people. I'm going to tell you more about that. We're going to keep tying all of this together. We're going to do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to let you know about LinkedIn Talent Solutions. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I built 2 barbershops doing just that. Checking out LinkedIn and getting the right people in, asking the right questions, getting the right answers. And because of that, I was successful. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, man, we're running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Man, we're talking about culture. We're talking about all of those things, all of those words that folks have used for so long to talk about why a team isn't doing well. And we're tying that into the fact that over the last 2 days, the Jaguars have done what they've pretty much done this entire offseason. They've stuck to their own. They've stuck to their own. They feel like they have the right people in the building and they're headed in the right direction. And this is the part of it where sometimes we don't understand. And when I say we, I'm talking about even me. Sitting there behind this microphone, frustrated, wanting them to do something. Not understanding exactly where they are with player development. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you one guy right now I really liked when they picked him. But then I was shocked that he was there a couple of years ago. I was absolutely floored that Luke Farrell was still around. I thought he was a good player. And then because I watched the games, but then I look back at his stats at Ohio State, and he really hadn't done very much. He hadn't done very much at all. But I like this setup. I like his frame. I like the way he played. He caught a couple of touchdowns in the semifinal game a few years back when Justin Fields was throwing to him. And I was just like, I think that kid can develop into something. And then they hire a coach like Doug Peterson, where the tight end position is not just an afterthought. It's a position where they can actually go out, find a guy that fits what they like to do, develop him, and he turns into a real good football player. Somebody said yesterday, I can't remember who it was, but it's somebody that I really do pay attention to on social media. They said he's tight end 3. I think it was my man James Johnson. I said, no, he's tight end 2. In there, two tight end sets, Luke Farrell's the starter. That's why it's so important to develop your own players. Because 1, he's still under contract. 2, you didn't have to go out and spend a whole bunch of money on Dalton Schultz, right? You got Evan Ingram in. He's Trevor friendly because they have a great relationship. He was productive. Now you got 2 guys, and then you go out and add a rookie and Brenton Strange, a guy that you can shape and mold. And now you got 3 tight ends. So even 2 years down the line, if you have to move on from somebody, you already have a plug and play. And my allergies are bothering me. I am not on that narcotic. So if you see me on YouTube scratching my nose, it is because of my allergies. But the thing is this is what it is. And granted, it caught me by surprise a little bit, even in off season, because we're not used to it. Now, I've watched other teams from afar, but I'm talking about here with the Jaguars. I wasn't used to it. And then even if I was used to it by watching somebody else build their team, I didn't trust them. And this is the mistake that a lot of people make. You still see the same colors. You still see the same uniforms. You still see the same name and title, but you have to realize, just like when they bring in new players, things don't stay the same. When they bring in different people, things don't stay the same. Now, I'm not blaming any of this on one person. I'm not blaming Tom Coughlin. I'm not blaming my friend Dave Caldwell. I am not blaming Doug Marrone, even though I blame him a little bit. I'm not blaming Gene Smith. I blame him a lot. And I'm not blaming Shaq Harris, the late great Shaq. I'm not doing any of that. What I am is I'm just saying, now I don't have an individual to point to. Because when I look at the front office, I don't look at them as an individual. I look at them as a group. The word team exists for a reason. The players are an extension of that team. When the cuts came, the cuts I said would be very difficult. I thought more of their own players would be picked up around the league. They were not, which tells you that because we watch it closely here, that maybe we're more in love with those guys than anyone. Or maybe, and this has happened in the past, those player agents that have players on the other teams, they say, no, man, he wants to go back to Jacksonville. He don't want you to bring him in for a week and then release him again. He doesn't want to come in for the league minimum or anything. Most players will go, I think guys that have been here want to stay here. I'm going to name the practice squad players. And I did a show, I did a lot of shows. Recently, on one of those shows, I said that I don't think they're going to go out and add a whole bunch of people unless their guys that they released on waivers were poached to the point where they had to mix some new guys in with the old guys. And that's where I thought the pro personnel department, I mentioned that yesterday, I thought the pro personnel department would be very, very busy and find some like-minded people. Fortunately for us, they did not have to. I'm going to read these practice squad players off. Offensive lineman Chandler Brewer, outside linebacker DJ Coleman, offensive lineman Coy Cronk, defensive lineman Deshaun Dixon, who you guys remember I said I thought he was a surprise cut. I did not think that he would have been let go anyway. Eric Hallett, rookie, DB. Daquan Jackson. Now that's a different name. I don't recall seeing Daquan Jackson. Derek Parrish was brought back, the little Swiss Army knife. Nathan Rourke, the quarterback, everybody's favorite. Darrell Williams, glad they brought him back. Seth Williams, a lot of people are glad they brought him back. Tavon Campbell, Snoop Connor was actually brought back. That surprised me a little bit. And wide receiver Jacob Harris. Never underestimate workflow and how coaches feel about guys that know how to function, do things the Jaguar way. Did y'all hear what I just said? I said the Jaguar way. For years, there was no Jaguar way. Now, there is a Jaguar way. And it is amazing how success and not having doubts about a whole bunch of players, knowing who your coach is, knowing who your quarterback is, being sure about the direction. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing how all of that comes together at the same time. And then we all say they have a great fit, they have a culture, and now they have an identity. It's amazing how a little bit of success and team atmosphere will cause all of these things to tie together and start coming together for the good sake of winning. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted here. I'm going to talk more about culture and fit as I continue to pull this information up for you here on Locked On Jaguars. So we're going to head to segment 3. I'm going to talk about how this stuff, this culture, the fit, sticking with your own guys, not hedging your bets, player development, how it all ties together, and how I think it's going to be really, really good for this franchise moving forward. And I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. I will first remind you for your next watch, please check out Locked On NFL. Today's version is out. James Rapine and I, we really, really break it down. Locked On NFL on YouTube. It's free to subscribe. It could be your second listen every single day. Also, wherever you get your audio podcast, tap in and make sure you don't miss an episode because there's all week different voices. Luke Braun, Ross Jackson, Kevin Oestreicher, Alex Clancy, Chris Carter, my man Chris Carter, the counselor, your boy Q, and Tic Tac Titans. He's on there. Tyler Rowland. All week, man, different voices, different way of hearing all the stories from around the NFL. So make sure you absolutely tap in. I pretended to forget Tyler's name. on purpose. That's a private joke between me and him, because we don't show the Titans any love around here. That's just who we are and what we do. Culture and fit matter. Speaking of which, the Titans, say what you want about them, they've always had a culture under Mike Vrabel. That's why you can never, ever, ever discount how much that stuff means, because they have a blueprint. They have like a hard drive. They have a way that they're going to play. And it extends beyond playing on the games. It's about how you prepare, what the players expect, what the fans will eventually expect, and how they operate in the offseason. I am so enthusiastic. It's easy to be enthused by the fact that they have Doug Peterson, the fact that they have Trevor Lawrence, the fact that they have Travis Etienne and Calvin Ridley and all of these parts, right? But what makes you, when you really think about it, the thing that really, really, really makes you happy, the thing that makes you more happy than anything, is the fact that you finally feel good about the direction from a macro perspective, not a micro perspective. You really feel great about the direction, the overall direction. Like, even if something goes wrong, it's going to be all right long term, because they know who they are. To get all biblical, you need to know what you look like even when you're not looking in the mirror. That bleeds down through the fan base. That bleeds down through everybody in the organization. It has permeated through the non-football operations folks. I talk to people in the building that do all different kinds of jobs, and they all say the same thing. This is different. They know what to expect every single day that they come to work. And hopefully what that'll do is that'll translate that they'll know exactly what to expect on the field. And even if they stumble, you always have this feeling, we'll be all right, we'll get back up. And that's what happens when something stabilizes. Now, a lot of that has to do with Trevor Lawrence and, of course, Doug Peterson. But we got to give Trent Baalke credit. We got to give the assistant coaches credit. We got to give the one voice sort of atmosphere. And even if you do hear a second voice, you're going to get the same message. That's what feels good to me. When you finally get to the point where you know who you are. They know who they are. When you know who you are, you know what to expect. This is a feeling that, to be quite honest, even in the years where now I did feel this way when Tom Coughlin was the head coach back in the day. You felt it, but it was just short-lived because he wasn't here very long. And then he left, and you had to watch the New York Giants play just like a Tom Coughlin team would have played if he was still here, and then they won 2 Super Bowls. The good thing about this today and right now, the way that I feel good because I know whatever they are is whatever they're going to be 6, 7, 8, 9 years from now. You're going to build it one brick at a time, but you're still going to build it. And you're going to know what to expect. Now, am I saying they're going to win every game? No, there's only been one team that wins every game. But you do know the world isn't going to be over if they don't win. You know, nothing. They'll be all right. We were always in the past searching to get to this point, to the point where it wasn't a crapshoot, to the point where you didn't know how well they were going to play every single week. You didn't know who was going to be here year after year after year. Doesn't it feel good that it's the same team, that they're actually running it back? It's almost as if, and you see my thumbnail today, you notice what I put on the thumbnail. Them lined up in the trenches across from the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And I said something to the effect of same team, new result. Because I'm going back to that game, the last time that they walked off the field. And the Jaguars said, you know what? We ain't finished yet. This group is not done yet. We're just going to get better. We're going to improve. We're going to come right back here, and we're going to run this back. Now, they added 10 young players. A team like Jacksonville and a team that thinks that they have it all is more likely to just add new players that they can shape and mold into their image, that they don't have to rush to get on the field to play, than to go out and add someone that, by the way, costs you a whole bunch more money. And then you got to come in and try to ingratiate that person that already has an idea of what they think about the NFL. And maybe sometimes there's a little bit of pushback, or maybe sometimes there's a little bit of, this ain't quite right. I just think, and that doesn't mean guys are bad people. I don't think the people that played here for 1 year under 1 year contracts and decided they were going somewhere else, or the Jaguars let them go somewhere else, I don't believe that that means that they're not good players and they're not good people. I believe that you can be you can be someone that's not a good fit, but still be good. It doesn't mean that they're not going to add free agents in the future. I think they will. I think they're going to be very selective, though, about who those guys are. I think the Jaguars are going to have a hard time retaining their own guys more than they would now. Listen to this now, and this is a big difference. They're going to have a harder time retaining their own guys because everybody's going to want them. That's going to be more difficult than it is going out convincing someone to come here and play. And to me, that used to be the thing that was the most difficult to do. All I know, it just feels good. It feels good to finally be the rabbit holding. I'm not going to say that. This is the wrong time, but you get the sentiment. The sentiment is, it feels good to be in charge of your own destiny and in control of your own destiny as a franchise, and not have to just depend on the luck of the whole world in order for you to be good. It feels good to know that it's not going to just be 1 year. And now they still have to have demonstrated performance on the field, but it still feels good to know that this thing is finally moving in the right direction. And I don't know if there's very many teams that need to do a podcast like the one I've done today, because there aren't very many teams that have had to have these counseling sessions year after year after year for the last 2 decades. I would say outside of 3 years, we've been 17 years of counseling and trying to figure out where we're going. Doesn't it feel good now to have a navigation system and to understand where you're going? Doesn't it feel good that while you're on the bus, you can take a nap and not feel like that when you wake up, you're going to be somewhere and you don't know where it is? That's because everybody on the bus is on the same page. Football is close. The regular season is now about 10 days away. 10. We're going to start doing some countdowns to what we expect, and then the games will be played. And every podcast we do during the season will be about the action and everything that's going on. Right now, I'm just helping you get your popcorn ready. Make sure you get ready and don't cook it too fast or too slow. Be back here with your popcorn tomorrow, because I have another show for you here on Locked On Jaguars as we look at the roster, break it down, look at the strengths, and look at I wouldn't call anything a weakness, but look at the strengths, and we're going to look at the areas where we hope that everybody has gotten as good on the field as they seem to have off of it. Until then, you guys, make sure you do what I always say. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.